think we're on page 4. And I was asked a question yesterday. I wanted to check the Hebrew. Oh, yes, here we are. In the world of things. What did that mean? Okay. Let's turn this off. See if I can find this now. Yeah, I think this is a weakness in the translation here. Yeah, so we're on page 4. So I think it was you yesterday who said to me, the very bottom of page 4, the 5 lines from the bottom. Our sages already warned us about this. They said that one should not make the goal of one's service of God, of doing the commandments, anything in the world of things. That's what it says in the English text. But the Hebrew doesn't say that. It just says, Dover min hadvarim. It says, anything of things. It doesn't say in the world. It doesn't imply that in the world as opposed to out of the world. It doesn't apply this world rather than opposed to the world to come. It doesn't apply anything like that. So there's no, it's just anything other than the service itself. Now, I want to go on a little bit because something I said, it was either last time or the time before, I'm getting mixed up now, will apply to one of the things that the Rambam says here. So the idea was to do it, so to speak, for its own sake. Not for the sake of anything else. And he quoted that you shouldn't make it a crown, and you shouldn't make it a spade. And a crown, as he says, is for self-glorification, and a spade is with which to make money. Well, self-glorification is something other than the Torah itself. That shouldn't be your goal in studying Torah, doing mitzvos. And money certainly is something else. No, you shouldn't do that. The bottom of page 4, he says, Anticulus of so-called, a man who achieved perfection and grasped the truth of many things, meant precisely this when he said, so this is a famous Mishnah Pirkei Avos, do not be like the servants who serve their master for the sake of receiving a reward, but be like the servants who serve their master without expecting a reward. Now let me do a little work on this. First of all, I don't know how familiar you are, you here and those who are watching the video, with the Ethics of the Fathers. But this, what the Rambam quoted here, has another version. And the Rambam's version is, check exactly whether they got this right also. No, they got it wrong. Maybe we should check this translation more carefully. What's written here in the English is not too difficult to understand. The Rambam has it a different way. Here it says, you should be like servants who serve their master without expecting a reward. Don't have any expectations. Don't put it on any conditions. Just serve. Serve for its own sake. That would be fine. That fits what the Rambam is trying to tell us. There is another version of the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which says you should be like servants who serve their master on condition not to get a reward. You should have a condition. It should be limited. You should have an expectation. The limitation, the condition, the expectation is no reward. I find that astonishing. I don't know how to understand that, especially since HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us in order to give us the reward. That's his plan. We said that last time. That's what he wants from the whole exercise, is for us eventually to go to Olam Haba where we get the reward. All the explanations of Olam Hazeh, this world, are just that in order for the gift of Olam Haba to be perfect, we have to go through the preliminary of this world. The Mishnah Pirkei Avos says that this world is like the corridor on the way to the great banqueting hall. Don't get stuck in the corridor, and don't mistake the corridor for the banquet hall. Make sure your goals aim to get there. So the whole purpose of the whole creation is for us to get to the banquet hall. Now what, a person's going to serve God and make a condition on it that God's purpose shouldn't be fulfilled? I'm serving you only so it shouldn't happen the way you want it to happen? That to me is too astonishing for words. I can't imagine what that's supposed to mean. But at any rate, certainly expecting a reward is wrong. Now, the translation reward here is also problematic because the word that's used in the Mishnah there is pras. And the Rambam's commentary of that Mishnah over there in Pirkei Avos, he says the following. You're serving God. What should your attitude be? What could your attitude be? What kind of attitude would there be that is conceivable but wrong? And what kind of attitude would be inconceivable? Well, the Mishnah doesn't say that it should be without schar. It says it should be without pras. What's the difference between schar and pras? Schar is wages. Wages that you are paid for doing a job. When you do the job, your employer owes you the wages. You have a right to them. Justice demands that you be paid. The Rambam says that's not the word of the Mishnah because that's insane. Because you are a servant, or more strictly, although the word is ugly so you don't hear it in English discussions very often, you're a slave to a master. The idea of wages to a slave is a non-starter. Slaves don't get wages. That's why the Mishnah doesn't say anything about schar. The Mishnah talks about pras. A pras is a free gift. You're certainly not going to expect, and you're certainly not going to make a condition that you should get wages. What you're doing isn't worth wages. But you might have had a thought that perhaps the master, if he loves me and if he appreciates what I'm doing, he might, out of his own good free will, give me something. And that, the Mishnah says, don't do. So the Mishnah is quite precise about this, that a gift is conceivable, but you shouldn't have that in mind also. So this is another example of the idea that something external, so in other words, let me push this just a little bit further. So now why is that? What is the Mishnah telling me? Why is it that I should serve the master without any expectation of a gift? So you could read that and say, because you don't really deserve a gift, because you shouldn't presume on the kindness of the master and so forth and so on. You could make all sorts of remarks about it. The Rambam is not reading it that way. The Rambam is reading it this way. If you serve the master with even a hope for a gift, you've lost the essence. The essence isn't the gift that you can get from doing Torah and mitzvos. The essence is the Torah and mitzvos themselves. You've falsified the value of what you're doing. If you have in mind, maybe he'll give me a gift. It's a much deeper problem that the Mishnah is addressing. That you falsified the character of the studying of Torah and doing the mitzvahs itself by hoping for something external to it to come as a consequence of it. That's a very deep point. He meant that one should believe that believe the truth for the sake of the truth. We say of such a man that he serves out of love. To him the sages have applied the verse, his profound desire is in God's commandments. In his commandments, but not in the reward of his commandments. So now, at this point, it seems to be a bit of a jump. We've been told 16 times already, you should know the truth because it's the truth. Okay, it says emes, it's not truth, and that's a whole subject which maybe we'll go into in detail someday. I believe it's recorded in one of my recorded share. But knowing the truth for the sake of the truth, desiring the commandments for the sake of the commandments, how does it get to love? Out of love? It sounds like to do the commandments out of love in terms of what? A relationship with God, a love relationship with God. Okay, so then I'm doing the commandments in order to express my love? Or I'm doing the commandments in order to communicate my love? Doesn't that sound like it's something other than the commandments themselves? Doesn't it sound like it's for the sake of something external? Isn't that what we've just been told 6 times we're not supposed to do? It's supposed to be the studying of Torah for the sake of studying Torah and doing commandments for the sake of doing commandments. So how can you say that doing it for its own sake is also doing it out of love? It sounds like 2 different things. I must tell you, at this very moment, I'm receiving a divine gift because I'm getting an insight into this that I haven't had before. This is really, really quite exciting. So I told you about building the tower? Did I talk to you about building the tower? Okay. So let's rehearse that moral and see if we can apply it here. I could say I'm building the tower in order to do X. I'm building the tower for the sake of X. I mean 2 different things. It could be that I'm building the tower as a means and X is the end, and X and the tower and X are 2 different things, like when I build the tower in my own backyard. Or I could mean that I'm building the tower in order to, for the sake of repaying the favor to George, in which case building the tower and repaying the favor are the same thing. It's just that this one thing that's going on has 2 descriptions, and when you know it as building a tower, it's a mystery to you why I'm doing it, and when you know it as repaying the favor, then it's not a mystery anymore. You understand why I'm doing it, but it's the same thing. So now, maybe if we push it hard enough, let's say doing the mitzvos out of love and doing the mitzvahs for their own sake isn't a contradiction at all. Maybe out of love is just another description of doing it for its own sake. It's not something external, like doing the mitzvahs for money or doing the mitzvahs for reward in the world to come. That really would be something external. But doing the mitzvahs out of love, to express love, to show love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it could be that that's just another description of doing it for itself. What we have to understand here is what is the itself. What is the itself that we're doing for itself? So let's take first doing mitzvahs, because it's simpler than the study of Torah. What is a mitzvah? A mitzvah is a commandment. To do a mitzvah means to obey a commandment. To do a mitzvah does not mean to do the action that the mitzvah commands. That's not the same thing. It's to obey the commandment. I'll give you a simple example. This happens in the Israeli army, maybe a lot in the Israeli army. You have people from all sorts of different countries and all sorts of different groups that are all in the army. Now let's imagine a Russian soldier and an Ethiopian soldier. They don't speak Hebrew in the same way at all. There's a difficulty of communication there. Now suppose the Ethiopian soldier is an officer, and he gives the Russian soldier an order. Shut the door. The poor Russian soldier doesn't understand what he was told. He doesn't even know he was talking to him, but he's cold. He goes over and closes the door. Has he obeyed the command? Surely not. He didn't even understand the command. There was no acceptance of authority and acting in the name of the commander. It was just he was cold, so he closed the door. He did what the command required, but he didn't obey the command. Now, you take a person who gives charity. He sees people in trouble, his heart is moved, he feels pity for them, and he heads the money. Does the Kodesh Baruch Hu want charity? Yes. Is it a mitzvah to do charity? Yes. Has he fulfilled the mitzvah? No. He has not. He's done what the mitzvah required, but he hasn't fulfilled the mitzvah. Mitzvos strichos kavana. Mitzvos require kavana, and in this case, the word kavana means intention. The Mishnayos talk about this. Let's suppose that a person's he needs a new pair of tefillin. So he goes into the store. He's an early bird. He gets to the store at 8:15 in the morning. The store is open. He says, "Show me your tefillin. I need to buy a pair of tefillin." So he shows the seller shows him a pair. Let me try it on. He puts on the shel yad. He puts on the shel rosh. Adjusts it, checks it. Good. I'll take them. Takes them off. Wrap them up. Did he fulfill the mitzvah? No, he did not. He must have in mind, the creator of the world commanded me to do this, and I'm doing this to fulfill his command. If he didn't have that in mind, he didn't do the mitzvah. Mitzvos strichos kavana. They need that intention. Now, I want to stress this because the word kavana has about 6 different meanings, and in this case it means intention, just intention. It doesn't require motivation, it doesn't require understanding, it doesn't require association, and Kabbalah and everything else, just the intention, because Baruch Hu wants me to do this, and I'm doing this to fulfill that obligation. So built into the idea of doing a mitzvah is a relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. That's part of doing the mitzvah. Now, what relationship is that? Well, the more you know, the more you understand, and the more you internalize about how a Kodesh Baruch Hu expresses himself in the world and what he is to you and what he does for you, the more realistic your performance of the mitzvah is. A person who thinks Kodesh Baruch Hu is all-powerful, and he told me, if I do this, I get rewarded, if I don't, I get punished, that's what I'm doing. Because I want the reward, don't want to get punished. His service is valuable. He gets credit for it. He will be rewarded for it. But it's very immature. It's very thin, because the Kodesh Baruch Hu is much more than just all-powerful and commanding and promising reward and punishment. He's much, much more than that. Actually, he's Avinu Malkeinu, he's our Father, our King. Actually, he's our sustainer. Actually, he's the one who gives us everything for which we have a gigantic debt of gratitude. Not just that he has power and can enforce things. And he's created us, giving us some of his own, giving us created qualities that are derived from his own qualities, and invited us into a relationship with him. All this is part of the nature of the mitzvah itself, because the mitzvah itself, as I learned from my Rebbetzin, when she said it on a Zoom share to the world, she asked, it was before Shavuos, and when we celebrate the giving of the Torah, and she said, Torah is commandments. What do you think of when you hear the word commandment? I thought, commandment. Obligation, duty, responsibility, reward and punishment, and so forth and so on. And she said, relationship. I said, wow, what? Relationship? Oh yeah, I guess so. If he commands me, then he wants a relationship, and I'm standing that relationship, and it matters what I do, and yeah, that's right. Mitzvah implies relationship. So to do the mitzvah for its own sake requires you to know what it is. And the more you know about what it is, the more you are fulfilling doing it for its own sake. And if you realize that love is the most appropriate and highest expression of recognizing who HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, then when you do the mitzvah out of love, you're really doing the mitzvah for its own sake. The love isn't something else that's being expressed by it. It's internal to the mitzvah. It's just another description of what you're doing. As I mentioned 5 minutes ago, this is a new insight for me. That this idea of the tower enables you to answer this question. And now I see how the phraseology, because in the 10th chapter of the Laws of Repentance, he talks about doing it for its own sake, lishma, that's what the word means literally. And there he says, me'avas ha'adon abori shesiva kain, out of love of the master, the creator who commanded it. He says those two things back to back. And I took the description of doing it out of love of the creator who commanded it as a sort of explanation of the word lishma, doing it for its own sake. That's how the Rambam sees it. But I see now it's much deeper than that. That if you understand what lishma means, especially with the example of the tower, if you analyze what the mitzvah is, then you see that doing it out of love is just doing it. Because that's internal to the mitzvah. It's not something external that you would achieve through doing the mitzvah. I think that works out extremely well. Then the paragraph here reads very smooth. Okay, are we together so far? Okay, now he goes on to expand on this. All of this is clear proof of what we have said. The master of the Sifri makes the point even better. Should you be tempted to say, I will study Torah in order to become rich, or in order to become rabbi, that means to have fame and authority, or in order to receive a reward in the world to come, even the world to come, Scripture says to love the Lord your God. Whatever you do, do it only out of love. Now this is a very striking rabbinic remark. Sifri is Midrash Halacha of Chazal. The Torah says to love. We naturally think there are 613 commandments. This is one of them. One of the commandments that you should have. Sifri is telling you it's not just another one of the 613. It's telling you how you should do all 613. It's the adverb to all performances. Just like David HaMelech said, Ivdu Hashem b'simcha, you should serve Hashem with joy. So the Torah itself says that you should serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu out of love. Again, this doesn't mean that if you serve him in another way, it's disqualified, that it's worthless, that it's void. Doesn't mean that. If you serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu just to get a reward, your mitzvahs are counted and you'll get a reward. But there's a specific injunction, a specific command to serve him out of love. It means your service is not yet complete, not yet perfect, if you haven't fulfilled this aspect of it and doing it out of love. So then, that means, of course, if you do it out of love, you don't do it for something else. When you'll be fortunate enough to be in a love relationship with someone, and you'll have an opportunity to show your love by doing something for your beloved, you're not looking for something else. You're not looking for something else to happen. Just the fact that you were able to act that way out of love, even sometimes if the beloved doesn't know. Suppose your beloved needs something and doesn't know that he or she needs it, and would be devastated to know that he or she needs it. And you can provide it without the beloved knowing. You won't be thrilled to do it? Let's imagine that you get a doctor's report about your beloved. The doctor says, I can't break this to this patient because I'm afraid it'll cause depression or whatever it is. I'm telling you, you love this person, this is the problem, and this is the medicine for it. And the person needs it desperately. And you sneak it into the person's food. How will you feel about doing that? I'm saving this person's life. The person whom I love. That's what I'm doing. Are you going to say, yeah, but the person will never say thank you, so it's not worth it? I don't think so. Not if you love the person. The very fact that you're able to do something out of love is a gigantic privilege. So that's what's internal to the commandment, and that's what he's saying here. The Sifri is saying something very profound here, that the commandment to love is to serve out of love, and it says do it only out of love. Rak me'ahava. And he ends the paragraph. Only a disturbed fool whose mind is deranged by folly and fantasy will refuse to recognize this truth. I think that's great. Okay, we're still together? Fine. Abraham, our father, achieved this level. He served God out of love. Zera Avraham Ohavi. That we are called the descendants of Abraham who loves me. We too must be aroused to move in this direction. Now, look at the Rambam's careful words. He didn't say, we too have to do this, which, since it's a pasuk in the Torah, and the Sifri told you what it means, you could have thought that's what he should say. Okay, the Torah told to do this, we must do this. No, we should be aroused to move in this direction. That puts much distance between where you are and this goal. You should be inspired to do something to move there. That's very realistic. It fits what he says in the Mishnah Torah also. However, our sages, well, he's going to explain it now in detail, knew that this is a very difficult goal to achieve, and that not every man could achieve it, which is a very strong statement. Not every man could achieve it, but that's what he says. One may understand the goal and still reject it, failing to apprehend that as a principle of faith. In other words, not knowing that it's commanded. If someone said to you, what do you think about serving God out of love? How does that strike you? And he may say, I hear you, and I hear that it would be appropriate. I hear that it would be noble in certain ways, but we don't have to, so I'm not moving that direction, because he doesn't know that it's a principle. Men do not do anything except to achieve profit or avoid loss. Most men would regard any other action as useless and meaningless. Now, I think this is perhaps a little bit extreme. I'm not sure what he means here. Yes, the desire to achieve profit and to avoid loss is a very strong type of motivation, and it is a very widely applying type of motivation. But let's take the desire to achieve profit, right? What are you going to do with the profit when you get it? I mean, if I want A for B, you could ask me why I want B. If I want B for C, you could ask me why I want C. Doesn't the chain have to come to an end somewhere? If I only want P because it gets me Q, then without getting me Q, I wouldn't want it. Now, what do I want Q for? I only want Q because it gets me R. If the chain is endless, I don't get to an end of anything that I want. At a certain point, the chain has to come to an end. And for all human beings, it comes to an end because your brain is finite. It can't hold an infinity of information. So there can't be an infinity in the chain. It's got to stop somewhere. And it does stop. There are things that you want for themselves. There are things that are valuable to you intrinsically. When you get them, you say, and somebody asks, what do you want that for? If he tolerates your question, he'll say, I don't want it for anything. I want it. And I've got it. That's the end of the story. If that isn't obvious to you, let me give you two examples. This guy is an economist. Say to him, why are you working as an economist? He said, because I earn money that way. Why do you want to earn money? Because I want to buy a house. Why do you want to buy the house? Because I want to live in the house. Why do you want to live in the house? Because I'll enjoy living in the house. Why do you want to do what you enjoy? Are you normal? Why do I want to do what I enjoy? Because I enjoy it. End of story. Not doing things I enjoy for some other reason. I do things I enjoy because I enjoy them. There's no further move to make on the chain. Now, this might not be true. He might say, to lower my blood pressure. When I have enjoyment, to lower my blood pressure. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. It's quite reasonable to stop and say, I'm working as an economist to make the money, to buy the house, to live in the house, to enjoy it. To enjoy it. Full stop. End of story. So yes, if you ask why he's earning money, that's only a means to something else, and he's going to get a profit out of it. But why is he enjoying it? That's not for the sake of a profit or avoiding a loss. It is the gain. Same thing is true with morality. Take the example which I gave in another context. I'm handing somebody $500. Somebody says, why are you doing that? I borrowed money and I'm paying it back. Why are you paying back money that you borrowed? Because I borrowed it. When I borrow money, I pay it back. That's what I do. Yeah, but why are you doing it? Because that's what I do. I'm not doing it to gain a reputation, not doing it to increase my credit rating, not doing it to solve my conscience. It's my conscience that tells me to do it. Because when you borrow money, that's what you do. You pay it back. So I don't think you could say that for all decisions that you make, for all things that you do, you have to be able to answer, what profit are you going to get out of it? Or what loss are you going to avoid by doing it? That would mean that everything you do is for the sake of something else. It's not true that everything you do is for the sake of something else. Some things you do are ends on themselves, and not for the sake of something else. So to say that, but on the other hand, when you see somebody doing something which many different people do for different reasons, it's reasonable to ask why you're doing it. Why are you buying a house? Some people buy a house to live in. Some people buy a house as an investment. Some people buy a house because if you have an address in this area, you can vote in this area, and it's important. He'll never live there. He won't sell it. He just wants to vote there. I mean, there are lots of reasons why a person might want to buy a house. And if it's something which people are doing typically for the sake of something else, and this person says he's doing it for itself, you find that suspicious. The guy's lifting weights. Why are you lifting weights? Because I lift weights, that's why. Really? You're just lifting the weights because you lift weights? Not to become stronger, more healthy? Not to impress your family? Not to win a bet? You just lift weights because you lift weights? Maybe you should see a psychiatrist. That's not normal, just to lift weights. It's the sort of thing that people do for the sake of something else. Now here's this person who's putting on leather boxes with leather straps every morning. Why is he doing that? Leather boxes with leather straps? I just love leather boxes and leather straps. I just put them on in the morning because that's what I do. That would sound very strange. There's got to be more to the story. But it doesn't have to be some prophet. It could be, as we've said now with the tower example 16 times, another description of what's going on, which explains why it's valuable. At any rate, he says Abraham achieved this, and it's rare because most people would regard many, many other actions and actions of certain types as useless and meaningless if they didn't achieve a profit. And here, perhaps the first orientation will be, what profit do you get from doing these things? But as a matter of fact, as he's saying, that's the wrong orientation. To look in terms of a profit that you're going to gain from doing them is the wrong orientation. Under these circumstances, it's hard to say to one who's studying Torah, do certain things and refrain from doing other things, but not out of fear of divine punishment and not in order to require a reward. So then why am I doing them? Now, you have to understand, the why am I doing them isn't the wrong question. The answer doesn't have to be punishment and reward. The answer could be, you don't know what you're doing. You don't appreciate what it is you're doing. And if you appreciated what you were doing, then you would do or wouldn't do it. Don't wave your hand. Why shouldn't I wave my hand? Because the terrorists around the corner are watching you, and when you wave your hand, they know that your friend is coming out of the house to greet you, and they're going to kill both of you. Don't wave your hand. The waving of your hand is a signal to the terrorists. Thanks for telling me. I didn't know that. If I had known it was a signal to the terrorists, I wouldn't have done it. So, you're doing the mitzvahs. The first thing he says is, why should I do that if there's no reward and no punishment? Because there's another way of understanding what they are, and when you understand that, you'll see why it's appropriate to do it. This is an exceedingly difficult thing to do because most men have not achieved such truth as they're able to be like Abraham our father. That is to say, they haven't achieved Abraham's understanding. That fits the picture. There's a certain understanding here of what's going on. And when you have that understanding, then you will come to see it differently. Therefore, in order that the masses may stay faithful and do the commandments, it was permitted to tell them that they might hope for a reward and warn against transgression out of fear of punishment. And don't misunderstand. To tell them, it doesn't mean to lie to them. It's true. It's just a question, when you tell somebody something that's true, you could be asked, why are you bothering to tell them that truth? Or maybe you shouldn't tell them that truth because it's dangerous. Like when you tell a person who thinks he's healthy that he's really very sick, and he therefore becomes depressed and doesn't take the medication, it wasn't a good idea to tell him, even though it is true. Why are we telling him this? After all, when you want to get him to do the commandments, and you tell him there's reward and punishment, you are inherently falsifying the nature of the commandments. Because what you're implying is, this is a good way to get reward, and this is a good way to avoid punishment. It's like taking medicine. And that's a wrong way to look at it. But it was hoped that they might be urged to strengthen their intentions so that they would ultimately grasp the truth and the way to toward perfection, just like the child analogy I cited above. What he isn't stressing here, but it's true, and there's no debate about it, is that when you're on the primitive level and you're doing it for reward and punishment, the mitzvos are fulfilled, and you do get reward for doing it. It's just that the service is immature. It was this reason that the sages charged Antigonus Socho with indiscretion. Antigonus Socho, we quoted above about not serving the master on condition to get a gift, the sages said you did something that was dangerous because you make it sound like there won't be any reward. When it says don't hope for a reward, one way to take that is don't hope for it because it isn't true. Don't be disappointed. Just reject it. And that you don't want to do because the Torah itself promises rewards. And the Torah itself threatens punishments. So obviously this strategy of promising rewards and threatening punishments is something the Torah wants us to engage in. So Antigonus is and saying, don't be like the servants who serve for the sake of reward or for the sake of a gift, could be misinterpreted into thinking that there are no rewards and punishments. That would be terrible. Torah doesn't want you to say that. Torah wants you to say it and have it and live by it and then graduate and mature out of it. They had him in mind when they said, page 6, O wise ones, be careful with your words. The masses, here we go, after all, lose nothing when they do the commandments out of fear of punishment, out of hope for reward, since they're not perfect, and they're serving God in the way that it is possible for them to serve God. It is good for them insofar as it strengthens and habituates them in loyalty to what the Torah requires. Out of this effort, they may be awakened to the knowledge of the truth and serve God out of love. This is what the sages meant when they said, a man ought always to labor in the Torah, even if not for its own sake. For doing it not for its own sake, he may come to do it for its own sake. Now, the words Rambam writes here are not quite as explicit as I would have liked. You could, and this statement that he quotes from the Talmud here, I'm going to now spend some time in trying to explain. Let's see if I can give you an example. If you do sports seriously, some of the time when you're practicing, you're just doing strength and endurance exercises. You're not practicing your skill in doing the sport, but you're giving yourself greater strength and greater agility with which to do the sport. So if you stay on the first level of just strength and coordination and agility, you'll have zero ability for the sport. So then, on its own, it has no value whatsoever. Same thing is true when you play a musical instrument. You spend a lot of time doing exercises. Typically, the exercises are very boring. They just force you to move your fingers and your lips or whatever else you're using in difficult ways to build up coordination, so that when you play music, you'll come to play music well. On the other hand, let's say you're learning to speak a language. So you're memorizing the vocabulary, and you're putting together simple sentences, and you're reading very simple books. You're using the language. You're actually using it. You're understanding it. You're communicating with it, just on a very low level. But there you're actually doing what the goal wants from you, and you have to develop your ability to do it better. Now, doing mitzvos out of desire for reward is like learning the language. It's not like building your strength and endurance. It's not like doing exercises on a musical instrument where you're not competing and you're not doing music. You're just preparing yourself. The actual performance of the mitzvah is valid. No one says that it's not valid. It's only a question of increasing your ability to do it in a deeper way. Now, the Gemara says, L'olam yasek adam b'Torah. The text he has here is Torah. Another text is Torah or mitzvos. A person should always occupy himself with Torah or Torah and mitzvos. Shelo l'shma, not for its own sake, but rather for the sake of some external reward, because from that you will come to do it for its own sake. So first of all, we hear that that's the only reason you should do it. You should do it because Baruch Hu wants you to do it, and you'll get rewarded for it. But the Gemara goes further than that. It says, L'olam, as one commentator says, always you should do it, which means you always start with the Shalol Lishma and graduate afterwards to the Lishma. No such thing as jumping straight into doing it for its own sake, which we could talk about. And it sounds like the Gemara is making a promise. If you do the study of Torah and the performance of mitzvos for an external motivation, shalom lishma, you will come to do it for its own sake. Now, when I first heard that a million years ago, when I was even more ignorant than I am now and very unsophisticated, I thought to myself, that sounds very strange. A person should study Torah and do mitzvahs not for its own sake, because we're guaranteed he'll come to do it for its own sake. Well, first of all, I think I know counterexamples to that. There are professors of Talmud at universities who spend their whole lifetimes teaching Talmud, and they don't budge in coming to do it for its own sake. They do it for the reward and for the prestige and for the intellectual stimulation, and they never budge from there. So how could the Gemara say there's a promise that if you do it shalom lishma, you'll come to do it lishma? And secondly, the logic of it didn't appeal to me. Let's imagine a person works at a job because he's getting paid. That's why he takes the job. He works for IBM for 40 years. Okay? After 40 years, he retires. Is he going to go to the office in IBM the next week and work there for nothing? Because he was doing it for money and now he's graduated to doing it for nothing? I don't think so. I think he's going to be in bed till noon, and then he'll go to the golf course. Why would anyone think that if you do something for the sake of a payoff, you'll automatically come to do it without the payoff? You sort of naturally graduate to doing it without the payoff. Those were the two problems that I had with this statement in the Talmud. Over time, I found solutions to both of them. One's in an essay by Rav Dessler, and the other's a related idea. But since it is now 7:20, we'll pick this up tomorrow.